Everybody, my name's Jason. I'll be giving you a couple slides up front, and I also know demo or it didn't happen, so I'll make sure to leave a lot of time for the demo, and feel free to ask questions or, point out something that seems interesting to you from the demo. Does that sound good? So the vision of controller, like Rob was saying before, we're really trying to make things easy for people. So how do you make things easy? How do you help them modernize? So if you're flexible, if you're agile, if you have user-centric quick starts, so if you have a quick start for, say, creating a new load balancer, I'll go through that in the demo. Make that very easy. Make it easy to integrate with your current environment. We know we're not going into some green field. People already have a lot of tools that they expect us to integrate with, so the plan is to integrate with those as well. Making sure we're resilient and efficient, the way people expect. HA, best practice configuration, that kind of thing. Make sure we're also intelligent and distributed. So having a lot of curated analytics, reporting, configuration analysis, and it's deployable anywhere. Like Rob was saying before, NGINX is known for being lightweight, portable, fast. We're keeping those same values going forward with controller as well. So we saw a few different unmet needs. We had a large financial services company saying they wanted to see historical trending of NGINX metrics. They wanted to make sure the application was working as expected, but they didn't have a good way to see that across their entire environment. We also had people like a marketing services company saying, our guys need point and click. NGINX is the only cloud-based tool we have on our environment. There's a champion of NGINX. He left. Now we're stuck. So think of controller as a new way of doing things. It's not cloud-based. It's all GUI-based. It's very easy to use. And another customer, a large federal organization who's a controller user, said, I want to make changes once and push it across the environment. If you have 200, 1,000 instances, you don't want to do things 200 times. You want to do it once and then just send it out everywhere. So we even had experienced NGINX users asking for help. So it isn't just for noobs. This is also for kind of pros. A lot of people are saying, I've been using NGINX forever, but I have a lot of configuration cruft, or I might not be doing things quite right. I want to make sure, is there something that can help me tell me what's best practices? So essentially, we saw people, they want to make their apps better. They want easy configuration, and they want to save time. So everything we're doing around controller is anchored on these three different aspects. So how do we make apps better? There's rich analytics and reporting. We use NGINX Amplifies as the foundation, if you guys are familiar with that or not. That's production tested at scale. We have over 1 trillion pieces of telemetry for over 18,000 accounts. We have historical trends for over 200 metrics, both application and system. And again, I'll show you all this in the demo. The customizable dashboards, and you can export over API. That's the ecosystem integration we were talking about before. The configuration analyzer that I was talking about before, where you have something that tells you if you're up to snuff, best practices or not. So easy configuration, five easy steps to create a new load balancer. So I'll go through that as well. Once that's up and running, it's easy to make changes. Everything defaults to best practices. I feel like this is an important point where if you're doing something through controller, whatever you're doing, we're helping you get to best practices. You don't have to worry about something you pasted in from Stack Overflow is the right thing or not, or something like that. If you're doing something through controller, whether it's a load balancer, API gateway, whatever it is, we're making sure that you're doing it the right way.
Two questions.
Yes.
First, where is controller running? Is it something that you're hosting as NGINX, or is this something that runs on premises, or both?
Great question. I should have maybe talked about that when we talk about lightweight and flexible. So controller can run anywhere you can run Docker containers.
Okay.
So it's a series of Docker containers. You could run it on-prem, in any kind of IaaS cloud, ESX, whatever you'd like. So it's very portable in that respect. And then the data plane, there's a list of OSs we support, but that's a broad list, and that can go anywhere also. So control plane, management plane, anywhere you'd like with Docker. Data plane, anywhere you'd like. So you can customize wherever you need those pieces to be.
Okay. And the second is around best practices, because when I think of best practices, that can be very situation specific. So what's best practices for a marketing agency is not the same for a federal agency.
Yep.
So how are you determining your best practices?
Right now, it's just very much a use case point of view, but we don't, the goal is to get more to what you're saying, which is what I think of as more finer grained best practices, where you say, I am a X. And we say, oh, well, we know X's like to do Y. Let's help you get there. So right now, it's more, what do people usually need out of a load balancer? OK, we'll set up all those defaults. What do people usually need out of an API gateway? We set up all these defaults. We don't have vertical specific or kind of finer grain things there. I would love to get there, but it's just not quite there yet.
Okay, thank you.
Would the, like, after you run a load balancer, I don't know, 2 months or something, you should change this or change that to make it work better?
It's something more. It'll look at the state and say, and this could be very pertinent for your question about federal organizations. They could look at the configuration analyzer and say, oh, well, you're running so-and-so crypto. It's actually better to run this crypto. It's stronger. Or the order of those ciphers is actually not quite best for performance. Right? So there's different things where it can look at and give you recommendations. Questions? Any other questions so far? So again, saving time, the smart defaults, we just talked about that a bit. The scaling thing I think is really important. As you get to larger and larger organizations, people want to be able to do something once and then scale themselves. Either it's their whole environment for a certain application, for a certain environment, and we make that flexible to have you pick and choose the subsets that make sense to you, and I'll show you that as well. This slide just kind of answers the earlier question, but it's quick integration to your existing environment. So again, the agent can go anywhere just about. The metrics can go to just about wherever you need them to go. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
Does the this controller platform, does that integrate with the ingress controller on Kubernetes, or is that a separate thing you'd manage?
It does not right now.
Okay.
Perhaps an unfortunate choice of name there.
Right.
So we're focusing just on the load balancing and API gateway pieces now. Coming up next, we expect to be services mesh. TBD on what we do with the ingress controller and this controller.
But the data plane, just to be clear, right, the data plane does integrate with ingress controller, Kubernetes ingress controller, NGINX Plus, or NGINX and with open source, and NGINX Plus is the ingress controller in Kubernetes environments.
Yeah,
That's true. That's a good point. You could monitor, say, your ingress controller, and I'll show you some monitoring. I was thinking more of a configuration management point of view. But you could certainly monitor for any use case you have at all, even some crazy unnamed use case, and do that through controller.
My question was more around the control plane piece.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is give you a demo. I'll switch between two different tabs here. I want to show you a couple of different things. I don't have it all on one demo system yet. So we'll start here with the overview page. This is the top metrics we heard application owners say were important to them. So things like application health, which is a APM light type of approach. If you hit the gear here, you can see it's a compound metric. I've got it looking across my GCP environment right now. It's a combination of successful requests, request time, and agent availability. You can look at different tags here, and we'll talk about the tagging system more, or across the entire environment. Total requests, HTTP errors, request time, traffic, CPU. And these can all be over different time periods. This is just the high level, so this is really easy to start with. Then you can go down at a much lower level, and let's just pick on this guy here. How am I doing from a NGINX point of view? I've got connections per second, requests, bunch of HTTP errors, workers, that kind of thing. So you can then go and say, how is my application doing over time? Again, you can pick different time periods here. You can see I've got a Google Cloud API gateway. I've got a load balancer in AWS. So it's multi-cloud. That's really easy to do. And again, you can have different use cases here for monitoring, whatever you'd like. All the metrics, you just need to interpret the metrics differently for whatever use case is applicable to you at that time. There's system level metrics. I don't think that's as interesting. More interesting, I think, is the application level metrics. So you have this to start with. Now you can go to dashboards. Now you can save and customize dashboards. You can see a couple of example ones here I've created in the past. Let's just create a new one. Now you can create a new set, new graph, new value. I'll just call it Cloud Field Day. Let's look at NGINX connections. Let's pick on the same load balancer again. Now you can see we've got some nice looking traffic graphs here. Now, what I did was start with a set that I wanted to see. I wanted to see a connection set. Now you can see there's other sets here you can pick, and those are basically groupings of metrics that we think are appropriate. But what you can do is take any metric you like. So you could take a graph, you could call it, sample graph, and you can see there's hundreds and hundreds of metrics that you can pick from here. So you could say, for example, 404 errors. How am I doing on 404 errors? Okay, nice. You can drag any of these around again. You can rename them, whatever you like. Heard a lot of interest from this from NOC type teams or other kind of operations teams where they'll get this dialed in just how they want, save it, and they can go reference it for themselves or other teams to go look at. Say, hey, go look at, demo/13, or just paste the link in and they can go reference it. What you can also do is just value-based too. If you don't want a time series, you want to say, again, let's pick on 404s. I want to see just what's the number of that 404. 0. Put this here. Get rid of this guy because he's ugly. Save it. Now I've got my connections and something that I thought was customized but interesting to me, 404s. And again, I can go and reference this again anytime, and you can keep creating custom dashboards. So any questions on the dashboard so far? This has been a really popular feature so far.
Can you do this for specific URLs or specific like layer 7 assets?
You can. So you can start to, I'm probably going to screw this up if I start doing this in real time, but there are filters in here, so you could then filter on / whatever care about thing is that you want. Yep.
If you're using, controller in multiple environments, so you've got maybe something running in AWS, something running in GCP, is it still just one set of containers that you've deployed somewhere to collect all those statistics?
It is.
Okay.
So this one set of containers here, all the statistics are coming into this one place. So I could come here and I could say, actually I want to collect all my GCP 404s and all my AWS 404s also. Hit save, and this will be, okay, well, I didn't burn enough sage to the demo gods here. In theory, this would be the set of all 404s across all your clouds.
Okay.
I'll have to go and see what's going on with the demo here, but you can imagine that. But that's a good question, yeah. So you have one controller, and then the data planes are spread everywhere, but they're all reporting into one place.
Okay. Aside from this GUI that you're using right now, is there also an API that you can interact with for controller?
We're working on a configuration management API. There is, if I can just show you, you can create an API client for export. So you could call it something like New Relic, Datadog, whatever it is. Where do I send that to? What do I send to it? The time series and the metrics. So you can then export all these to something you might have in your environment already, gives you the key, then you can plug that right in. The configuration management's in progress. The metrics are there right now.
So I guess with this, the power here is the fact that you don't have to deploy anything additionally. You've already got NGINX running all those load balancers. And so for something like the example here, New Relic or some other tool you're using, rather than them having to go out to all those places and pull these metrics in, you just go to the controller and get all those pieces.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's the metric side of it, and then there's the configuration piece separately. So
Right.
that, yeah.
Right. And that's in development now, but nothing to demo quite yet. We have the configuration analyzer I was talking about before. This is the static analysis box here. You can see the different files. It's saying I'm missing a server name in a virtual server name configuration. It might be saying you're hard setting something that should be auto. Again, the ciphers you're using are out of date or bad ciphers. So this is something we're seeing a lot of interest in from even advanced NGINX users are saying, this config analysis, this uses years of NGINX knowledge. I mean, we built it, we've been supporting it, we've been running engineering and getting customer environments and support tickets, and so we've really learned the right way to do this, and we can help everybody else do it the right way.
A quick question.
Yes.
I've got an existing estate, probably a lot of different NGINX out there, and I come and put controller in. How do I import? Do I run a discovery? Do I have to crawl, or do I have to go put all the config in? if I'm a large existing estate, what sort of work is involved for me?
Right. So I'll show you how to do it right now. So if you go to load balancing, you go to instances. What you say is new instance. It gives you a curl command. You copy and paste this. You then run it on your existing estate, and that will be the thing that sets up what we call an agent that links up the controller in your NGINX data plane. So that will send the metrics between the two. That'll push the configurations down. So when you do that, then that brings that instance into the controller environment here. And we'll try and inherit the config as best we can. So you can see here we have it pattern matched in these 4 different columns for load balancing. This is the way we thought would make sense. If you have some custom configuration that we don't know how to parse, we'll hold it for you, and push it again, but we won't really show it to you very well. So we are looking on the roadmap, getting that story better. It's like formal import where you can actually see better what you've got and things like that. Right now, this is more of a config inheritance.
All right, okay.
So I'll jump into the config management in a second. While we're just doing the dashboards, if there's something you didn't like on the dashboards or something you want to just keep track of, there's also these different alerts here. You can create different alerts. So I could create a new alert. I'll just pick on 404 again because it's easy to type. It's above 0 for how long. So we give you customizable thresholds to make sure that there's a little bit of hysteresis in there. You don't want certain blips just because they happen. You don't want to be triggering your alarms all the time, right? So this is kind of a way of dampening something out. You could also pick different times here. Again, this could be across my AWS and across GCP, or it could just be for particular instances or particular applications. So this is all tag based again, so you can just go and create tags however you see fit. Who do I want to send it to? Sure.
Do you support anything else than sending emails?
I do. So that's a great reason to flip over to the other tab right now. So this is the release that just came out last week, 2.2. Go try it and love it today in real life. So now what I wanted to show you is the same thing here for notifications. We added ServiceNow. So that's the first of many planned integrations where you can do not only email, but you can also do ServiceNow. And you just hit configure. Where's your instance? What's your OAuth secret? And this will now send all the notifications from NGINX controller out to your ServiceNow environment.
How rich is that integration with ServiceNow? So if something goes away in terms of an alert, will you then close the incident in ServiceNow? Is it a sort of two-way thing, or is that just kind of triggering something being created in ServiceNow?
I believe it just triggers it, and you have to manually clear it in ServiceNow. I'd have to check. And this is just the beginning. I mean, it will get richer and richer. This goes to the default incident table. If you have a custom incident table location, we wouldn't support that quite yet. So, but we're hoping that this shows people the beginning of good ecosystem integrations around alerting.
Will you support the security incident plugin within ServiceNow?
To be determined.
Okay. I prefer this because I don't have to buy an extra plugin for ServiceNow to support it. But
yes?
On the same line of thinking, does the controller have any sort of like outgoing webhook capability where we might be able to build something of our own with a different ITSM?
It doesn't right now. I've been hearing that request often, so that's something that's on the roadmap. And we're considering, do we just offer up generic webhooks, or do we try and call out specific solutions and pre-qualify those? So we're still working through that right now.
considering the market, I would imagine a Slack built-in would be.
Yes.
I'm surprised it's not here already. That's,
Yes,
before email almost, yeah.
That is in progress as well.
Okay.
Yeah. We've been getting a lot of interest in Slack. Any other questions so far? Okay, so let's jump into the load balancing configuration management if everybody's ready. So we have like a new way in 2.0, which released in January, a configuration first approach. And this is really saying, how do I start from a policy point of view and worry about the instances and hardware and environments and stuff later? But really, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to do for this application? What makes sense to me? So you're starting with the configuration. Here are the columns that you saw before. I'll just create a new load balancer. So let's just call it tech field day to be suggestive. And we'll use an address I'm pretty sure no one's using. So I'll give it 4 pool servers. Tech field day, pool. And what do I want to apply to? It could be slash, it could be slash CFD5, depending on whatever makes sense for your environment. And I'm done. 5 easy steps. Now, it was easy because we picked a lot of those default best practices for you. Right? So to the conversation earlier, Rob said there's 700 directives, and you only had to put in 5 things. Right? So that meant we picked a lot of things for you that we thought were best. But if you determine, for my application, I actually want something a little different, it's very easy to make changes. So it's easy to get started, but then it's easy to make changes. So if you look at, so this load balancer I just created, you might say, I want a custom error page for 404s. Where do I redirect it to? SSL certs, logging. This is a nice new feature in 2.0 where a lot of people say, what's the recommended log format? There's a bunch of crazy ways you can do that. You can just hit this button, and it'll add all the metrics the controller wants to see to populate all those nice 200 metrics that you saw before. And this will then grab all those from the logs. I have to validate this guy.
Bless you.
Getting mad at me.
For that SSL certificate.
Yes.
Okay.
So right
You have
now
to
it's
supply it with a
bring your
file.
own certificate, put it on the data plane, and then point this to it. We are looking at doing more certificate management in the future. So
Yeah, I would definitely want to see integration with either an internal PKI or something like Let's Encrypt.
yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned. Okay, get this out of my way.
Could you run Acme on one of the pool servers and feed it
Kind of a
certs? Yeah, kind of a back-end way to do it? Is that to get it with,
So you're saying different certs on the pool servers back here?
well, no, could you run Acme on a pool server, the Acme protocol, and potentially use it to fill in the certs here? Yeah, that's the Let's Encrypt protocol.
Oh, let's encrypt.
Yeah, it's called Acme.
Yeah, so right now we don't have any direct integration from here with Let's Encrypt, but you can run a Let's Encrypt script that runs on the actual machine to generate those certs automatically with like a cron job. But you would still need to use the UI to load those in.
That was my question.
But
I see.
R18, we just released dynamic certificate loading. So if the cert is there, we support using that in the configuration as a variable, and it will load them as needed. So there's some stuff we're going to be adding in a controller to do that more dynamically later.
Cool. Thank you.
Is it possible to take one of these configurations and turn it into a template that you can just use to create additional configurations? I see the copy and
Yes.
save as. Is that
Yes.
kind of like a template?
That is
It's not
exactly-
really a template.
That's exactly what I was going for with this. So internally, I call this configuration templates. Load balancer is the first piece of policy under template, but you can imagine an SSL policy, other pieces of policy, and then you can kind of start to mix and match them across a given template.
Right. I would
And this
want
copy and
to-
save as is exactly that, where you can call it, So now I've got the demo app that I was just working on, and I just copied it over here as well.
Okay.
So these are the different top-level configurations. I just made this one by the copying. You could keep copying down. So
Could you do a role-based access control where some people who are provisioning new instances can't edit that template?
yes,
can only spawn
not
copies off of
right
it.
now. We are looking at very rich RBAC, and I think one of the differentiators we will have is giving people the right model for the way they think. So trying more and more to align controller with the way they think around applications, about app services, and then the RBAC will be very fine-grained, really more on that level that you're saying for an application or for a given service I'm trying to deploy, and not on a particular instance basis.
Okay.
So I'm running out of time. Let me just kind of walk you through a little bit more of the configuration template usage. So again, these are all clickable. we picked a lot of defaults, but then it's easy to make changes to any of these. So again, I set all the policy. I didn't do anything with environments or with instances or data planes or anything yet. Now I say, okay, I set the policy. Who do I apply it to? Let's say apply it to these two load balancers. Great. So I did all that, but this is all still pending in controller in the management plane. Then when you do a push down here, then that pushes it down to your NGINX data plane, and then it enacts the policy. And again, one of the nice things we've been working on here is version history and diffing. So a lot of people have been asking about this. So let me just go back here. Do something like change a port number, say from 80 to 81. Now if I go to the version history, you can see I made one right here. So I've got to pick these two.
I have a quick question for you
Yes.
there on that. So are you using like a source control repository behind there, or can I bring one? Can I bring a code repository for this to be pulled into? Can I then integrate that with my DevOps pipelines, those sorts of things?
What you can do right now is get a preview of what we plan on pushing. We are looking with our API configuration management piece coming on the roadmap is integrating with CI/CD pipelines. How do we then do the right thing? If you're someone doing all that external to us, how do we read it in? How do we send it out? How do we give value? Is it the value we can give around tagging or application modeling? Is there value around providing something like Analyzer as a service? So that's all something we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I think that's really important for the API management piece. So all the other API managers I work with are on that basis of source control, version control, CI/CD pipelines. I like the GUI, don't get me wrong, but I think that the market that I would use this with needs that kind of tighter integration. The GUIs are going to be great for the kind of edge cases where people want to use it, but still need those integrations to fit the day-to-day people that are going to use it.
I think they'll also want an audit log that's going somewhere every
Yes.
time a change is made to a configuration, so you
Yes.
can see who changed it from 80 to 81.
Exactly. I mean, you can see here, but I more explicitly we're adding audit log, who did what and when, and helping people get that visibility.
Is the idea that you always start from scratch in here, or could I import an existing configuration that I'm using across multiple existing load balancer instances?
The best use case is starting from scratch. If you can, that's what this is best suited for. You can inherit existing config, but it's not ideal right now. So if it doesn't fit into the understanding that we have here, then it's not necessarily a great fit.
But you could convert it into yeah.
Then you could certainly use this for the monitoring, alerting, the metrics export, that kind of thing.
But once I've brought that config into here, I can't get it out in a sort of file-based way.
You could get it out when you start to run into source of truth problems. So what I'd recommend is...
I think that's more to store it, like in the source code kind of example.
Exactly.
So
if you're
this would still be the source of truth, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if you choose as a source of truth, then that's okay, and you can still, do a preview or anything, grab that code and grab it whenever you'd like.